So Turning Point was this past Saturday. It was live on Impact Plus. It wasn't a traditional Impact Wrestling pay-per-view or anything like that. It was one of these events that they're doing on the Impact Plus streaming service. And these are really important, actually, I think, to Impact Wrestling in the future. A lot of people kind of write them off and say, well, it's not Slammiversary, it's not Bound for Glory, it's not Hard to Kill, it's not one of these actual pay-per-view events that Impact Wrestling has been doing, but it's really important, I think, to the future of Impact Wrestling and to the future of Impact Plus, the success of Impact Plus, that they do more of these events, and that's what they're going to be doing because we've already seen that Final Resolution has been announced for December. Now, we actually had a couple of title changes, major title changes, this Saturday at Turning Point, and this is really important as well. As I mentioned, with the future of these Impact Wrestling, Impact Plus events, Impact needs to show that things can and will happen. They need to show that anything can and will happen at these events, hence why it's really important that you tune in to watch them, hence why it's important that you purchase a subscription to Impact Plus. So I understand the need for the shock factor, if you will. That's why it happened. That's why these title changes happened this past Saturday at Turning Point. But we're going to go through them and we're going to talk about what happened, why they happened. And as I mentioned, one of the reasons why I think they did happen was because they need to show that things can happen and anything can and will happen at these events. They need to make the streaming service worth the money. And to be honest, I think it's worth the money alone. I think the back catalogue, in the same way with the WWE Network, I think the back catalogue of having all of the TNA Impacts, some of the old TNA original pay-per-views, some of the old TNA pay-per-views themselves, and some other original stuff on there, I think it's worth the money alone. I think just having access to that back catalogue as a pro wrestling fan is worth the money alone. But once you start adding this more relevant original content like these Impact Plus pay-per-views, that's a really big deal. So I think that's why we had some of these title changes. It looks like we're going to have more of these events going forward, which I'm really excited about. I think Impact can absolutely go back to what they used to doing and do month-to-month shows. I don't see a reason why not. There doesn't have to be pay-per-views. These Impact Plus events, I think, are really important. Now, I did hear some reports, and you can tell me because I didn't have any issues, but it might have been the issues for some, that there were some issues with Impact Plus prior to the event. I know that Impact were migrating and upgrading the service, and they were worried that there were issues with it. Even about half an hour or an hour before the show went live, there was lots of posts on social media by Impact Wrestling saying if you are having issues, if you're not having issues, you can access the show at this link kind of deal. But I think it went off without much of a hitch in the end. We'll have to see. If you did have any issues with watching the show on Impact Plus, let me know, because it'd be really interesting to hear your experience about what happened really Saturday when you were watching the show. But I compare these Impact Plus shows to like WWE, and they came to this realization a couple of years ago, or whenever they launched the WWE Network, so 6 years ago, and they probably came to the realization a few years prior to that. Pay-per-view is dead. Pay-per-view is dead. The days of making a lot of money in pay-per-view are dead, unless you are the UFC, and even they've moved their pay-per-view model to ESPN Plus. But the days of traditional pay-per-view, making big money, having big buy rates, unless it's a huge boxing match, the days of month-to-month pay-per-view being a financially viable option for a pro wrestling company, it's dead. It's just not going to happen. Nowadays, the money model when it comes to pro wrestling is making your money off of TV deals, off of television rights. AEW and WWE have shown that. When it comes to WWE's deals with Fox and NBC Universal, AEW have shown that with their deal with TNT. You make your money off of TV deals, and then you also make your money additionally on a streaming service. And it's been shown that that's the same with WWE and the WWE Network. So it makes a lot of sense for Impact to do more of these Impact Plus events because it's an extra revenue source. Is there a TV deal amazing? Well, it doesn't matter because Anthem owns Impact Wrestling and Anthem also owns Access TV. So that doesn't matter. But therefore, they have to look at making the Impact Plus service profitable. How do you do that? You add more original content on there and relevant, updated content like these Impact Plus events. So Impact Wrestling is very well backed. And I think credit to Impact Wrestling with this Turning Point event. Coming out of Bound for Glory, Bound for Glory was their biggest show of the year. And you had a couple of title changes at Bound for Glory. Coming out of Bound for Glory, Impact Wrestling could have put on a show where nothing happens. They could have easily done that. How often have we seen WWE do that? Where it comes to, Backlash or Extreme Rules, whatever the post-WrestleMania pay-per-view is, sometimes, not all the time, in credit to them, but sometimes coming out of WrestleMania, you have that pay-per-view where nothing happens. It's just a reheated WrestleMania with no title changes. Yes, obviously in the past we've seen situations where that hasn't been the case, but we've also seen cases where it was. So Impact Wrestling, you could have been confused or led to believe that the Turning Point event coming out of Bound for Glory, nothing would happen, but they did quite the opposite. We had two major title changes at Saturday's Turning Point event. The first being that we have a new Knockouts champion, that being Deonna Purrazzo. Now, Deonna Purrazzo won the Knockouts championship against Su Yung, defeating her at Turning Point on Saturday. This was a no disqualification match, but Deonna Purrazzo won the match after both Knockouts gave it their all, with Purrazzo hitting a cradle pile driver to reclaim the Knockouts championship. Deonna Purrazzo is now a two-time Knockouts champion. Of course, her first reign, Deonna Purrazzo, came at Slammiversary when she defeated Jordynne Grace to become the Knockouts champion for the first time. She held the title for only 98 days before losing the championship against Su Yung last month at Bound for Glory. Now, this is very interesting because it was actually spoiled before Turning Point went on the air that we were going to have a new Knockouts champion. Fightful Select, which is the guys over there at Fightful, it's their Patreon service, so you have to subscribe to it, pay a bit of money. It's behind a paywall, so if you want to do that, go ahead and do it. They report a lot of interesting information over there. But they reported prior to the show that Deonna Purrazzo was going to recapture the Impact Knockouts championship from Su Yung. Now, as I mentioned, Deonna Purrazzo had only lost the championship to Su Yung last month at Bound for Glory. But this is where it gets very, very interesting, because at Bound for Glory, of course, Deonna Purrazzo was scheduled to defend the Knockouts Championship against Kylie Rae. Now, we all know the situation when it comes to Kylie Rae. Kylie Rae didn't appear on the show. She was replaced by returning Su Yung. Since then, the fallout has been pretty extraordinary. There were reports that she didn't show up. People couldn't find her. There were worries about her health and well-being. Since then, Kylie Rae has retired from professional wrestling. She still is under contract to Impact, but Kylie Rae has admitted that she's retired from professional wrestling, and once again, we wish her all the best. But Fightful is reporting that Kylie Rae was set to beat Deonna Purrazzo at Bound for Glory and receive, quote, a big push. Therefore, it can be assumed that Deonna Purrazzo wasn't going to regain the Knockouts Championship anytime soon if Kylie Rae had won the Knockouts Championship at Bound for Glory. So this says to me, plans have changed. Plans obviously have changed, have altered. This truly is the storyline effect of the fallout from the Kylie Rae departure and the Kylie Rae story coming out of Bound for Glory. Obviously it wasn't the plan. Because according to Impact's plan going into Bound for Glory, Kylie Rae would be the Knockouts champion now. I'm assuming she would have probably faced Deonna Purrazzo at Turning Point, but she would have defeated her, and then Kylie Rae would have moved on to another opponent, possibly Su Yung or Susie. I think, if the way I'm reading it, I think that was probably the case there, but obviously that hasn't happened. We know the situation now with Kylie Rae. We know what happened at Bound for Glory, and the Knockouts Championship picture looks to have altered very, very drastically. It does make you wonder, though, and it certainly has made me wonder, why did Deonna Purrazzo drop the championship at Bound for Glory then? Because I guess hindsight, this is the thing with this Knockouts Championship picture. Hindsight obviously is a wonderful thing. They didn't know, Impact, they being Impact, they didn't know that when Kylie Rae didn't show up at Bound for Glory, they didn't know she was never going to come back. They didn't know she was going to retire. I don't think even at the time, well, I know they didn't. At the time, they didn't know to the extent of what really was going on with Kylie Rae. All they knew at the time is that Kylie Rae wasn't in the building for Bound for Glory. So whenever they made that decision, I guess maybe they made the decision, okay, Su Young's going to come back. That was always the plan. But Su Yung can come back, defeat Deonna Purrazzo, and then maybe Kylie Rae comes back and we can have Kylie Rae versus Su Yung as what I think might have been the original plan. That's why I think Deonna Purrazzo dropped the championship at Bound for Glory. Or maybe they just dropped it as maybe logically it made sense. Deonna Purrazzo didn't prepare for Su Yung. If you've got Su Yung returning, you can't exactly have her lose the match at Bound for Glory, I suppose. That's another way of looking at it, because, I mean, it really would have been a damp squid if, you know, Su Yung returns, I'm going to have an open challenge. Deonna Purrazzo says, I'm going to have an open challenge at Bound for Glory. You have Su Yung, everyone goes crazy, oh my god, I can't believe Su Young's back, and then she loses. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It's all a bit clustery, and I mean, what can you expect? I mean, it's a very difficult and crazy situation, to be honest. So maybe Deonna Purrazzo dropped it because she kind of had to. It made sense. Maybe because of the return for Su Yung, and again, maybe, and I think this is quite logical as well, maybe they just thought Kylie Rae would come back, even though she missed Bound for Glory. They thought, you know what, we still want to do the Su Yung Kylie Rae feud. Maybe we just have Su Yung win the title and we can kind of do it in reverse order kind of deal. But obviously that hasn't been the case. Kylie Rae isn't going to return to Impact, so it's a very confusing situation. This is pro wrestling. Pro wrestling, plans change. You have to change on the fly. You have to alter on the fly. Very rarely in pro wrestling do things go to plan. And I think Impact have they've had a couple of weeks now to reassess the situation when it comes to Kylie Rae. Okay, it doesn't look like she's coming back. What do we do now? Where do we go from here? So fortunately, the way they tape their shows, they tape them in batches. So they would have had at least a couple of weeks to really sit on this situation, have a look, reassess, go, okay, how are we going to get from now, sort of November, December, final resolution to Hard to Kill? How are we going to do that? But it does seem like plans have changed, and it does feel slightly strange that, of course, she dropped the title, her being Deonna Purrazzo, she dropped the championship to Su Yung at Bound for Glory, only just to win it back a month later. I'm not a massive fan of that kind of situation, but in fairness to Impact, it does kind of feel that their hands have been kind of forced due to the Kylie Rae situation, due to thinking, right, do we have Su Yung as the champion going forward, or should we just get the belt back on Deonna Purrazzo and then we can reassess things? I think that's maybe what they've done there. Going forward, though, now, I suppose you have to question what is next for Su Yung. Because Su Yung made this return at Bound for Glory, the character Su Yung, after being Susie for so long, and obviously Susie was so closely associated with Kylie Rae. What happens next with Su Yung? Because she's returned, she made this big return, but she's lost almost instantly. Yes, she won at Bound for Glory when she had the element of surprise, but in a straight up match, a no disqualification match, she lost. And also on Impact, it went to a disqualification, but she lost to Deonna Purrazzo there. And from a Deonna Purrazzo point of view, why would Su Yung even be in the Knockouts Championship picture now? Because Deonna Purrazzo has beaten Susie. She beat Susie at Victory Road. She broke her arm. Then she beat Su Yung at Turning Point here in a no disqualification match. Pretty clean. So again, where do you go if you're Su Yung? Does Su Yung go back into that Knockouts Championship picture? I'm not sure she does. And I'm not really sure there's any logic behind Su Yung getting more championship opportunities, considering that she lost twice in a row to Deonna Purrazzo, one by DQ and one by pinfall in a championship match. Now, I know Impact does do the whole rematch clause, so maybe we do get another Deonna Purrazzo versus Su Yung match. I could see that happening, but it's a very clustery situation. It's a very strange situation, but ultimately what it feels like to me, this feels like a reset. You have to look at it like that. Coming out of the situation with Bound for Glory and Kylie Rae, it feels like, okay, we'll go back to Deonna, we'll reset, and then we'll move on. We'll think of something else. They were dropping the championship at Bound for Glory anyway. As the report from Fightful says, the plan was for Deonna Purrazzo to win it back, to lose the championship rather at Bound for Glory. But plans have changed. Now, in terms of, I mentioned Kylie Rae, is there an update on Kylie Rae? You know, I haven't heard anything, and I don't really expect to hear anything. I think the details that we were looking for when it comes to what happened at Bound for Glory, we pretty much know now. We know the situation where Kylie Rae says she's retired, she's not coming back anytime soon. I think as a fan base, and certainly Impact aren't rushing her back, or there's no ill will or bad blood or anything like that. As a fan base, we should be doing the same. As a fan base, we should say, you know what, I'm not going to say, I never want to see Kylie Rae in the ring again, because I would love to, but if she doesn't want to, I just want what's best for her. And I think as a fan and as a human being, you should probably think that. So I don't think we're going to get an update really on Kylie Rae for a long time now. I think she's more than content just to get some help, disappear, and that's fair play to her. That's fair play to her. That's her right. So there isn't really going to be much update about that. And as I mentioned previously, Impact Wrestling have issued a gag order to their wrestlers, to their officials, to their staff, etc. So we're not going to hear any shoot interviews or anything like that when it comes to Kylie Rae for a long, long time, I don't think. And as we shouldn't. That isn't their story to tell. That's Kylie Rae's and Impact's story to tell. More so Kylie Rae. So when it comes to the Deonna Purrazzo, Su Yung, as I mentioned, I do question how Su Yung is going to have more championship opportunities, but I do think the feud will continue. As I mentioned, Deonna Purrazzo won by DQ on Impact, which set up the Turning Point match. Now she wins at Turning Point. I do think there will be a rematch. I do think the feud will continue, but Deonna Purrazzo here, rightfully so, I think, by the way, is being booked very, very strong. Very strong. She's already a 2-time Knockouts champion. She's defeated Jordynne Grace. She's defeated Su Yung, defeated Susie. She is beating all of these challenges. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. I mentioned before, I talk a lot when I talk about Impact Wrestling about someone being the figurehead of the division. Who do you build the division around? And it looks like right now they're building that Knockouts division around Deonna Purrazzo. And you can't question that. Incredibly talented in the ring. Really misused by WWE. Ever since coming in the summer, or spring-summer, she's just been fantastic and impacting for a while. She was working without a full-time exclusive contract. She's earned it. And now that she's earned it, she is been the centerpiece of that division, and she's doing a fantastic job. And I think that's the right thing. I do find it odd. As I mentioned, I do find it odd that Su Yung Susie is doing jobs. I just find that quite odd, considering that the character did have some momentum when it returned at Bound for Glory, considering it had been off screen for a while and we'd seen so much Susie for a while. Now that Su Yung returned immediately to lose 2 matches, to me, is very odd, considering that kind of character is so unstoppable, unbeatable, and she kind of defied the odds when she returned at Bound for Glory and defeated Deonna Purrazzo. So the fact that she's had back-to-back defeats is strange, and the character is so monstrous, so dominant, that you just kind of expect it to win, and you need to win, and quite frankly, you need it to win to keep up its character of being strong, of being a monster, of being this otherworldly character, because once you start losing matches, it's not all that terrifying anymore. Yes, the monster is only terrifying when you don't know how you're going to beat it or if you're going to beat it. Once the monster starts losing matches, it's pretty tough. Now, I know the counter argument to that might be, well, it's a statement of intent by Impact about the character of Deonna Purrazzo, the faith and the belief in Deonna Purrazzo, and that is true. But why would you bring Su Yung back to lose? Again, it's a really difficult situation. Because obviously plans have changed and altered there. And with Kylie Rae departing, obviously there is a void now. There is a Kylie Rae void when it comes to Impact Wrestling. And I suppose the next question would have to be, who fills that void? And I think when it comes to the Knockouts division right now, there is obviously a lack of people in the singles division. Obviously in the Knockouts division in general, there's a lot of people available, but they're all very, very busy right now. You have to look at what's going on in the Knockouts division, because we have a Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament going on, or just about to start this Tuesday, and most of the Knockouts are involved in that. So most of the Knockouts, they're busy at the moment. So who goes across into the singles division? There aren't many people. That's why I think the Deonna Purrazzo and Su Yung feud will continue, because it kind of has to. There is a lack of bodies there involved. Everyone else is busy in the Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament. So it'll be interesting to see what the future of the Knockouts division, of the Knockouts Championship, in terms of the feud will be going forward, because I don't think they have a ton of options. With the Kylie Rae departure, with everyone else being busy with the Knockouts Tag Team Championship, there's certainly not many options available to them right now. In terms of the match, I thought the match was a real fun match, hard-hitting, and what more needs to be said about the Knockouts division, quite frankly? I wax lyrical about it all the time, but it's so justified. It's one of the best women's division in the world. It's absolutely by far better than AEW. I think it does rival WWE's women's division. We've obviously got the Tag Team Championships returning, the Knockouts Tag Team Championships returning. So it's a statement of intent by Impact. I've mentioned how strong they book that division. Multiple matches, multiple storylines. They know how good it is, Impact. They have put so much time, effort, and money into that division that I think is really paying off. So it's very interesting. Obviously, as I mentioned, I was surprised that the championship was dropped by Su Yung so quickly, but plans change, and I think that's just an evidence of that. Now, as I mentioned, it wasn't the only championship to change hands at Turning Point on Saturday. One of them was the Knockouts Championship, but the other was the Impact World Tag Team Championships, because we have new Impact World Tag Team Champions, that being the Good Brothers, as Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson won the Impact World Tag Team Championships, defeating the previous champions, the North, that being Ethan Page and Josh Alexander. Now, this is very interesting. Of course, this is the first time that the Good Brothers have won the Impact Tag Team Championships in their career. The first time they held the championships since signing with Impact back at Slammiversary in the summer. Now, during the match, both teams strategized tag team wrestling. I really enjoyed this match. It was a classic tag team match between two great tag teams, two really solid and fundamentally tag team psychology from the tag teams. I really enjoyed the match. But it was the Good Brothers who came together, who won the match as they hit the Magic Killer on Ethan Page to become the new Impact Tag Team Champions. Now, of course, the North are two-time Tag Team Champions at this point, and their second reign was cut incredibly short. The same as Su Yung dropping the championship to Deonna Purrazzo, as Su Yung won the championship at Bound for Glory. It was the same with the North. The North recaptured the Tag Team Championship. Surprisingly, I must say, go back and watch the videos. I was very surprised by it. But the North captured the championships at Bound for Glory, but dropped them very quickly to the Good Brothers about a month later. But they still hold the record as the longest reigning tag team champions in the company's history with their first reign. I found this one very, very interesting, this decision to drop the titles very soon, because when the North won or recaptured the tag team championships at Bound for Glory, it said to me a lot of things. You know, the Ethan Page is re-signing, the North are here to stay, they're going to stay as a tag team, blah, blah, blah. And then when they dropped the championships pretty much straight away at Turning Point, all the questions I had going into Bound for Glory about the North just came right out. They came right back and came straight back into my head. Now, when it comes to the Good Brothers winning the tag team championships of Impact, it was inevitable. It was always going to happen. It was always going to happen. I think, given those signings of Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, they were huge free agents that were massively in demand. Even when they came into WWE, they were huge names in New Japan, and they were big signings for WWE then. So when they were released by WWE back in April, they were two big names that people were very, very surprised about. But yeah, you have to remember, these were guys that just signed 5-year contracts with WWE the year prior. So obviously that was very, very surprising because they were big names. They're big names from their time in New Japan. They were big names in WWE. Tag team wrestling doesn't matter in WWE, but they were featured acts with the likes of AJ Styles. They were in the WrestleMania main event for night one. In the Boneyard match of AJ Styles and The Undertaker, those were big names, big name talents. And it was a massive, massive coup for Impact Wrestling to sign them, because I think a lot of people thought, rightfully so, they're going to go to AEW. And I think, I don't want to say their bridges were burned, but there was a little bit of heat there. Absolutely, with the Good Brothers and the Bucks for a while, because they decided to re-sign with WWE and not go to AEW back in 2019. But regardless, it was a huge signing for Impact Wrestling when they did sign earlier this year. And it can be argued they are the two biggest names in the company in terms of, people know who they are, what they've achieved in the industry. They've been champions everywhere that they've been, and people know them. People know them in the business, hardcore fans from Japan. People know them from the WWE. They have a wide reach of people, casual fans, that know them also from their time in WWE. They're two of the biggest names in the company, and I don't know this for a fact, but you would probably assume that they've got two of the biggest contracts in Impact Wrestling right now, because they demand a high fee. They're well-known names. They're big stars. They're big stars and one of the biggest tag teams name-wise in the world. So you don't have those kind of talents come in. You don't have those kind of names come in and not put the titles on them pretty quickly. Now, you're not going to put the tag team championships on them instantly, but you're not going to wait 18 months into their 2-year deal before you put the tag team titles on them. So it was inevitable. It was inevitable that the Good Brothers would eventually become the Impact Tag Team Champions. It just was inevitable. It was always going to happen. It was just a matter of when. Now, I've seen some people saying, I'm surprised that they got the titles this quickly. In reality, it's November. It's November. They signed in, July? So, 4 months? That's probably about right. As I mentioned, they signed 2-year deals. Exclusive deals to Impact. They can still work dates for New Japan once that situation opens up and they can more freely travel to Japan. Obviously they can now, but they're going to have to quarantine for 2-3 weeks or however long it is, and then they've still got to do their Impact commitments, which are their first priority. So they're not exclusive in that sense, but they are exclusive over there in North America. So as I mentioned, what do you expect them to do? What do you expect Impact to do? I said they signed 2-year deals. You're not going to put the tag titles onto them in 18 months' time. You're just not. You're not going to wait ages to put the tag team titles on them, and they are the biggest names, arguably, in the company. And they're on big wages. They're on a big contract. You don't have them doing jobs. You don't have them not winning the tag team titles. So I think you have to get your money's worth. You have to get your money's worth. And you have to squeeze that sponge and get all the money you can out of the Good Brothers whilst they're under contract. Who knows how long they will stay with Impact? Who knows if they'll re-sign in a couple of years' time? Who knows in 2022 are they going to re-sign? We don't know. By then, maybe the New Japan, everything's back to normal and they want to go just work for New Japan again. By then, maybe they go, you know what? The heat has died off with AEW. I think the heat's off anyway with the Young Bucks now, but they've kept their distance. Now's the time to go into AEW. And I think that will probably be the case. So you have to get your money's worth. You have to get your money's worth. And the Good Brothers, they're in the news as well. Talking Shopper Mania 2 was a big hit. I think arguably it might have been a bigger hit for Fight TV than the first edition. So they're in the news. And it makes sense from a company point of view, from a promotion, from a social media point of view. They've got the biggest followers on social media, all of this stuff. It makes the most sense to have them being the Impact World Tag Team Champions. They're ambassadors for Impact. Since signing, when they signed with Impact, people did question them. Why are you going to Impact? They're a smaller company. You could have gone to AEW. You could have gone straight back to New Japan. Why did you sign with them? And they've been very vocal about how much they're enjoying it. They love the freedom. They love the roster. They love the locker room. Put the tag team titles on them. They become bigger ambassadors for the promotion. So it makes all the sense in the world. And for me, even going back to Bound for Glory, look at that result at Bound for Glory. As I mentioned, the North winning at Bound for Glory was, to me, very, very surprising. But the way I look at it now that we've got a bit more clarity on the events after Turning Point, it looks like, for me, that the plan was always to get the tag team titles on the Good Brothers. Now, for whatever reason, Impact just didn't want to do the switch at Bound for Glory, so that meant that the North were transitional champions. Perhaps they didn't want the Good Brothers to win the championships from the Motor City Machine Guns, so potentially you could argue that's because Impact wants to get to a Good Brothers versus Motor City Machine Guns feud. I could see that, but the only counter argument to that is, well, they could have just pinned the North. The Good Brothers could have pinned the North at Bound for Glory, but I suppose maybe Impact wanted to get the Good Brothers versus North feud as well, which transitions nicely into what is the North's future in Impact Wrestling. Because if they just gave the North the tag team championships to ensure that we got a Good Brothers versus the North feud before the end of the year, which is when Ethan Page's contract expires, that to me suggests that maybe Ethan Page is indeed going to be leaving Impact Wrestling. We know Ethan Page, as I mentioned, his contract is up at the end of the year. I think on January 1st is the date it expires. Now, Ethan Page has been very open and transparent about the situation when it comes to his contract. He says it is expiring. He's spoken very, very highly of Impact Wrestling and said they've allowed him to speak to various organizations and promotions, but his first priority is Impact Wrestling. He said that everything he's done over the last sort of 6-12 months, that includes getting himself into great shape, improving in the ring, improving on the microphone, has all been to get a better contract with Impact Wrestling. He said that his first priority is Impact, his first conversation is Impact. He just wants an improved deal. If he gets an improved deal, he will stay with Impact. Now, given the fact that they won the titles at Bound for Glory, lost them straight away to ensure that they could do a North versus Good Brothers feud before the end of the year, which is when Page's contract expires, there is a lot of questions. There is a lot of questions about the future, and I know he being Ethan Page, he posted a video which turned into Karate Man talking, and Karate Man also appeared at Talking Shopper Mania 2 over the weekend as well. I know that, and I know that Ethan Page is very committed to Impact, but it will raise questions because, you know, we know AEW is interested in Ethan Page. We know WWE would be interested in Ethan Page too. I prefer Ethan Page to stick with the package of the North for a while. I think there's more he can do as a tag team guy and as a singles guy in Impact, but we haven't had any news about that, and the loss at Turning Point will raise questions about that. Maybe that was the intent too. You have to look at that too. But again, it's another short title reign when it comes to Impact Wrestling. We've had a couple now. Eddie Edwards' world title reign was short. Su Young's Knockouts Championship reign was short. The North, this tag team title reign was short. So I think Impact needs to be slightly careful when it comes to these short tag team title reigns. As I mentioned at the top of the video, I understand the shock factor. I understand the need to show to people, you can't miss these Impact Plus events like Turning Point, like Final Resolution, because anything could happen. Anything could happen, including 2 title changes. And it gets people watching these Impact Plus events. I understand that. And obviously, as I mentioned, when it comes to the Knockouts Championship, people coming and going, people leaving the company, contracts expiring, injuries, that does affect that too. So that ultimately is an aspect that they need to think about too. When it comes to the Good Brothers, now that they're tag team champions, what happens next? I would think, look, if they wanted to squeeze in this North versus Good Brothers feud before Ethan Page leaves, if he does leave, then I would suggest that this North versus Good Brothers feud continues at least till the end of the year. So probably into Final Resolution next month, I think, as well. But as I mentioned, the Good Brothers versus the Motor City Machine Guns in 2021, once Alex Shelley returns from injury, I think is a really, really interesting concept. 2 big name tag teams. That is a big name tag team match that we haven't seen before. 2 sort of iconic tag teams. I think that's a big name match that possibly they could do for Hard to Kill. I don't know if Alex Shelley will be ready in time. Certainly for Slammiversary though next year, that is a feud that they could do. That would be very interesting. Now I know some people are saying, what about James Storm? I don't know what the situation and the future is with James Storm. I would love to see Good Brothers versus Sabin and Storm. How great would that be? How great would that be? I don't think they'll be feuding with... the Good Brothers will be feuding with Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. They did that heading into Bound for Glory, so I think that's finished. Triple XL lost to Storm and the Machine Guns at Turning Point as well, so that... to be honest, I don't want to see that feud anyway, to be honest. I don't think that they're going to feud with the Dinas. A feud that I could see happening though, Eric Young, of course, debuted Joe Doring, or re-debuted Joe Doring at Turning Point. So if that is a stable, if that is a tag team, that could mean the Good Brothers versus Eric Young and Joe Doring, and they would match up quite well. You've got the small guy, Eric Young, face off Carl Anson, then you've got the big guy in Joe Doring facing off against Luke Gallows. That makes a lot of sense for me. And then another tag team, of course, you could have is Sami Callihan and Ken Shamrock. I think that would be a lot of fun. I'd be really down to see the Good Brothers versus Callihan and Shamrock. So there are options there. There are options. I'm surprised they did the title switch at Turning Point. Maybe I could have seen them doing it at a pay-per-view like Hard to Kill in January, but we don't know the situation of Ethan Page, and we don't know the situation of a lot of things. So surprised it happened on Saturday, but not surprised it happened overall. But of course, as always, these are just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the title changes this past Saturday at Turning Point? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about Impact Wrestling, so be sure to leave a comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button as well. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.